Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff, Mosher, Adam, Caplan, another Inside the Birds episode that is again dedicated to free agency. Our last podcast, which we got great feedback on, was more devoted to the Eagles' in-house free agents, of which there are many, about 13 of them, I think that it was, that the Eagles will have to make decisions on, some tougher than others. We went through all of them. Today, Adam, we're going to talk about the areas that we think the Eagles need to and will end up addressing in free agency from the outside. They finally have some money this year. The Carson Wentz albatross is off their back, and they're going to open up some cap space, and they've got draft picks. So this should be a very interesting offseason for them, because the one thing we settled on coming out of the last podcast is, especially on one side of the football, this team got a lot of holes that they have to fill.
They do. I think if you talk to the Eagles, they would be honest with you. They kind of know where they're at. You know, they love that they made the playoffs. It was a good story, Nick Sirianni's first year, but they've got a lot of work to do. As you said, they're going to have a lot more cap space. 24, 25 million, that range it should be once the final calculations are in. They carried over 16 million. So it's not, the cap is an absolute non-factor now. They'll be able to do whatever they need to do.
Yep.
And then the question would be, who do they extend? Well, you talked several months ago about Hargrave. I still think they need to look at that. It can lower his cap number, obviously, and this guy's been a great story, development, and he was healthy. Good job of scouting in advance that the Eagles did on him. They clearly have gotten that one right. But they just have issues. We're going to get into their needs. It's funny because, like, Geoff and I will rank them, and people will say, "Oh no, I think it's this position." Look, the needs are obvious. It's A, how do you rank them? And B, how much, in terms of resources, how much do you put in cap and cash and draft resources? That to me is really the challenge for this front office.
I think it's going to be a telltale offseason for us, Adam. I mean, we'll get intel that we normally do, and especially next week at the Combine. But regardless of intel that we get or don't get, we're going to find out a lot about the new coaching staff, what they prioritize, or if Howie Roseman is still going to do what he's done for the most part for the last 5 or 6 years, as far as prioritizing certain positions. But there might be certain signings or things that they do where we say that kind of reeks of the new regime and maybe what they want more so than what historically the team has done. So I'm kind of excited about this offseason and seeing the moves that they make, and then trying to figure out going forward, just like we talked with Greg Cosell, which I'll get to in a second. Everybody wants the Eagles to go out and get a free agent wide receiver. They feel like the drafting has had mixed results, obviously, at that position, but that they, as we've said last year, they need a veteran. They need an adult in the room besides Devontae Smith, someone who's been there, done that. But before you can start figuring out which receiver you think fits best, you have to know, where do the Eagles see some of their own receivers fitting? For example, if Devontae Smith, which is what we talked about in the Greg Cosell, the intel with Greg Cosell that dropped Wednesday morning, if they view him as not an X where he's been kind of moving around and playing a lot of, but more as a natural Z, and they want an X receiver, right? Compared to if they're just fine having interchangeable receivers, then some of the guys out there that are more natural X's may not be as appealing. They just may want the best overall movable part. So we'll find out based on their moves, some of their philosophies, both offensively and defensively. And that's the part I really look forward to. I wanted to ask you this as we kind of have a discussion about free agency and who they bring in. How would you describe Howie Roseman as a free agent shopper since coming back into power in 2016?
Really good. Like, it's not, I haven't ranked them, 32 teams. Who does the best job as a general manager of free agency? He's excelled at it.
Yeah.
Is he perfect? No. Bring him back to Sean Jackson. I'll admit I was wrong. I thought it was the right move because I thought the contract was just too big. I get. They restructured it and they gave him more money when he came back from Tampa Bay.
Right.
But I understood why they did. They wanted someone who could run. So I get that part of it. Yeah. But too many injuries, too big of an injury history. So I think Roseman has learned from that, because that's when he made that proclamation. He said to Peterson, he goes, "Listen, we got this has got to stop with the injured players. Can the guy run, and can he stay could he stay healthy? And that for the most part hasn't been always the case in free agency with him since that Deshaun Jackson miss. But they just, as you said, coming back to full power, the first time he's really had full power is 16 on, where it's no, they're not sharing it. It's really been him. Whereas Chip Kelly had some, Roseman had more. Now it's all Roseman. Free agency has been pretty good to him. And I got to give their pro department credit. They've done a good job at advance. They've got good character stuff. They've done a good job of guys bringing the right attitude for the most part. You go through that Super Bowl team. My goodness gracious, the high character guys. LeGarrette Blount. He had issues early in his career with Pittsburgh. We've been well documented. He grew up and the Super Bowl winner with the Eagles and Patriots, but beloved, by the way, not only by the players, by the coaches as well. Chris Long obviously was a tremendous signing. That 17 team, everything turned to gold for Roseman in the front office. I mean, you couldn't make it up how well they did in free agency. It didn't look like the Patrick Robinson would be for a while, but who knew? But yeah, you asked a great question. I would love to. I wonder if anyone analytically has ever done a study on who's done great since 16 on. Roseman easily top 5. Is he number 1? I haven't looked at it that closely.
Yeah, I wasn't even asking you to put a value, like a good or bad judgment, just kind of, what kind of free agent shopper is he? Because in my mind, he's different than before when he first came
to
GM under Andy Reid. He does not go after the big fish in a way that a lot of people like in free agency, but also in a way that has backfired a lot in the past. I mean, there have been, whether it's Namdi or Stacey Andrews or other people that we've seen the Eagles, blow money on and constantly say, well, how many times would they say, well, we know free agency is dangerous. It's like a bad marriage. You don't really know somebody, but then they went and did it anyway. Right. I think if you look back, he's been a very selective shopper, smartly selective shopper in free agency. He's not on Saks Fifth Ave every year, but he's also not, in Walmart, right? I mean, he's kind of found that good middle market. Young guys, typically, if they're older, they're 1-year veterans. You mentioned Patrick Robinson. That was a great 1-year signing. Chris Long was a great 2-year signing. Some guys were great conceptually. It didn't work because they got hurt. You mentioned Deshaun Jackson. Haloti Ngata was a really good idea as a number 3 tackle. He was hurt. He actually wound up helping him when he got healthy at the end of the year. But when they're older guys, he wisely gives them short-term deals. And then he looks guys like Rodney McLeod, Brandon Brooks. He's looking for that younger guy on the rise, second contract, that's not going to command so much money and be a diva about it. In fact, one of his best signings recently in the last few years was Javon Hargrave. Now, he paid, at the time, Hargrave became the highest paid DT for like a cup of coffee for a minute, right? But that year was not a great DT, like all these big names. So even when they gave Javon Hargrave a lot of money, it's not like he was giving uber cash to Hargrave.
Let's put it this way. It was top of the market, pretty much top of the market, but here's why they did it. This is an ascending player.
Yep.
That they and I remember you had that scoop on our show, and I was like, how did he know this? Like, how? Because you said like a guy to keep an eye on is Javon Hargrave, and I know he's a good pass rusher at South Carolina State, if I'm not mistaken.
South Carolina State, yeah.
But I mean, $13 million a year for this guy. He was never that good with the Steelers, and he got hurt year 1 with was it pectoral or was it pectoral?
Pec injury? Yeah.
Okay, and then we saw him in training camp, like, all right, this is my breakout player of the year. This guy, no one could block the guy. And you saw he was close to the top in quarterback pressures for the first 5 or 6 weeks. He was unstoppable. He leveled off in the second half, but still, obviously, it's a very good signing. And he's now on the final year of his deal at making $12.5 million. Cap numbers $17.8 million. Sure, certainly, if they want to create cap space, they can extend him. Why not? He's not old. He just turned 29. He just turned 29. Yes, he just turned 29. I mean, you seriously could put a 2-year structure on a 3 or 4 year deal to spread the cap hit out. This could be his last good deal. But look, he's been a good story. And yeah, Roseman, look, he was part of that group that completely botched 2011, the so-called dream team.
Right.
Asamoah, they were going for broke coming out of lockout. They were going to spend, and it didn't work. And I think Roseman learned from his mistakes. Like you're building a team, not an all-star team like John Dorsey did with the Browns. That's why
Right.
Dorsey did make it. You're trying to get a team, not a bunch of individuals.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I think, they learn about chemistry. This is big for their building, and why you don't see. There was some stuff said about Wentz before he left, but for the most part, guys get along. Guys
Mm-hmm.
are good people,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't see a lot of reporting about, oh, this guy's a troublemaker, or this guy's a backstabber,
Right.
which you see from other teams. You don't see that because they get generally very good character guys.
Correct. So to take a broad view of what we're about to talk about, based on what we've seen from Howie since 2016, I know that fans out there and people like get seduced by big names like Chris Godwin or Allen Robinson. I'm trying to think of, Von Miller. I'm trying to think of some other really big names that'll be out there in free agency. We've got Devontae Adams. But that's not really what Howie has done or been in the last 5 or 6 years. So I think if you want to be a smart fan, you're probably looking at some of the middle market guys, or some of the older veterans on a 1 year deal who can come in and just fill a role, or some guys who might be about to be on their second contract. If the Eagles weren't so good on the offensive line, I would say, hey, like a Brandon Scherf, right? But I don't think they're going to be signing Brandon
He
Scherf when
also
they've
has a
got
bad injury history. Great
right,
player, but
right,
really
right.
bad injury history. Yeah.
Bad injury history. But that's my point is, though, somebody who's a good player when healthy and on a second deal, that would normally be what they target. So maybe there's somebody out there at one of the positions the Eagles need, that will kind of come back from the combine and get some feels on. We'll see.
Yeah,
About
one
that.
thing I'm just going to add: understand there's a reason why players make it to market.
Yep.
Quarterbacks don't. The word this is it. You cannot believe this quarterback group. It is so bad.
Yeah.
There's not one NFL starter out there. Mitch Trubisky is probably the best free agent quarterback.
Yikes.
I mean, now I know I'd heard
Not
from,
Mike Lennon.
no, he's done. But no, Trubisky apparently did well as a practice player. But again, he's still relatively young. But he's
Right.
not a starting NFL quarterback. He's a guy who could compete for a job, starting job maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of where the quarterback position is right now.
Right.
Buyer beware. They're all backups. There are certain positions like we talked about with Cosell earlier this week. The receiver position is good. It's deep. Now there are a couple guys who are coming off major injuries. Godwin off an ACL injury,
Mm-hmm.
but they're it's a very deep group at wide receiver. And the Eagles don't need. They need it because we'll get to team needs, and that to me it's funny when we rank these things because you and I may not agree on this one. I'm very curious to see where you think their top need is, what position on either side of the football.
All right, we will get into that in a second. So two programming notes. We mentioned it. The Intel with Greg Cosell, our new show on the Inside the Birds platform, debuted on Wednesday morning, 6 a.m. So the next one will come out next Wednesday, 6 a.m. We went through free agent wide receivers with Greg and free agent cornerbacks with Greg. I'm sorry, linebackers. And I thought Greg did an amazing job putting everything into perspective, that before you have the conversation about people and personnel, you have to have the conversation about who you are philosophically. Are you putting a lot of money into a good wide receiver if you think that you're really mostly going to be a heavy run team again, and you've already got two guys swallowing up a lot of your targets in Goddard and Devontae Smith? We had that conversation. And then he went and broke down all the tiers of guys that we gave him, from the best like Mike Williams to a guy like Byron Pringle. You should hear what Greg had to say about Byron Pringle. I thought that was pretty interesting. Same thing with linebackers, the other group that he went with. There were some guys that he really likes and thinks would be good fits for the Eagles, that aren't a lot of money but would serve a role. So I would encourage everybody to listen to that. It's been on the podcast platform and it'll make its way to YouTube, if not today, very soon. And then obviously Trey Thomas did an excellent third video for us based on the defense. We told you we were switching sides with him. And his goal was to answer the question. We brainstormed this together. Was the Eagles defense, when it was not good last year, which was usually against good teams, was that because the pass rush was not good, or was there something more to it? Pass rush or coverage? And my God, do you know Trey? We've asked him to do these videos, and he's doing them for us. He's working for us. He did a half-hour video and used the clips from every single game the Eagles played this year. And it was really fascinating. And you can really see the difference from when they were playing, the quarterbacks who are good versus the quarterbacks who are not good. But the common theme is that the defensive line, even though it finished very last or second to last in sacks, it really wasn't always their fault. It was just so glaring that the issue mostly that they had, and I'm not saying the D-line was great, but the issue was that when they lost, it's because quarterbacks were three-step dropping them to death, as we talked about, the death by 1,000 cuts. Like, you can't ask a defensive line to get sacks when a quarterback is just knowing where he's going with the ball every single time. Three-step, bam, whether it's Brady. There was the Chargers quarterback. He did that.
Oh.
The Raiders quarterback. He did that. I mean, when you watch the video, you really see that Josh Sweat, Hargrave, Cox at times, but really Sweat and Hargrave did good jobs throughout the year. I mean, they provided the pressure when necessary.
Your pressure,
quarterbacks on the ball. Yeah,
that's why the pressure numbers were up and that sacks were low.
Right, isn't that? And that was amazing because remember we talked about this. There were analytics websites that would give you pass rush win rate, and Eagles would be high, like individual guys would be high, but then you look at sacks and it'd be low, and it didn't add up. But when you watch Trey's video, which I encourage everybody to do, it's only on our YouTube platform. It's very educational. I think he lays it out perfectly. This is what we bring in Trey for.
And when you watch, number one, he's using all coaching tape. He's on TV tape. When I watched on Wednesday, it was so great because hearing him as an offensive line guy who knows obviously D-line play because that's who he would go up against as a player, talk about tackle end stunts and tackle stunts. Just going through it and the coverages. It's funny because he'll go, see, on this play, it's actually the coverage.
Yep.
You could see how far off the linebackers are. They got the pressure. They made the quarterback get rid of the football, as Trey points out, because we didn't talk about this enough in the regular season. But the linebacker, the DBs were so off that the quarterback was able to complete it. And I can tell you, here's a nugget for you. So one team I talked to at the Senior Bowl, I can't say the team because I can't give that out, but I'll tell you exactly what happened. They were incredibly critical of the coverage schemes that the Eagles had. They said when they went against them, this particular team, it was like pitch and catch. And they got exactly in their advanced work, they got exactly what they're expecting.
Sure.
And okay, look, you want to say other than Slay, they're not good enough for corner? That's fine. On the outside?
On the outside, yeah.
Right. Their linebackers are too deep. It's a fact. They line up they line up deeper than Schwartz. I know that for a fact. Okay, that's why as Trey will point out in that video, very well. Saw it with my own eyes. I'm like, that's it. There's some things schematically that Gannon's going to have to adjust to, because when you have, whether it's, you mentioned Herbert or the other quarterbacks that they face, Carr, Brady, you name it, all the quarterbacks who went off against them, it's just not acceptable. Sometimes it's not on the players. They're only. And I understand the talent level that Gannon was given was not good enough. It wasn't. In the back end, it sure as hell wasn't.
Right.
Needs to be better. Slay's a stud, no question. But they need help there. A linebacker has been what it is. They don't cover very well. They not having Davion Taylor. That'll come into our needs part when we get to the defense on the show, what they want to do there. But everyone's got a piece of this. It's not just coaching. It's front office, getting the coaches, players. The coaches have to figure out schematically where they could tighten things up. Just stop making it so easy for quarterbacks. That's the thing going.
Amen. Amen. That's got to be the theme of defense in 2022. Stop making it so damn easy for the quarterbacks. Even in some wins. Like, remember that Garrett Gilbert game for Washington? That first half,
I know.
This guy has 6 seconds to throw the ball. What's up with that? And then the Jets game too. The first half of the Jets game, Zach Wilson. Yeah, stop making it too easy for
there you go,
for quarterbacks.
That's what I'm talking about.
All right, so let's get into this free agency preview. We'll rank kind of the positions that we think they need to upgrade the most. Go through some names first. Hoops fans. I know Sixers fans are getting excited. The latest offer from DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA, is just too good to pass up. I'm talking between the legs 360 windmill good. New customers can bet just $1 on any team and get $150 in free bets if they win. It's that simple. DraftKings Sportsbook customers can also bet on the NBA with same game parlays. Combine multiple bets from the same game for a bigger payout. More legs you add, the more money you can win. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. Best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the promo code ITB and bet just $1 on any NBA team and get $150 in free bets if they win. That's promo code ITB at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 or older. Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit. Restrictions apply. In partnership with Meadows Racetrack and Casino. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, Adam, what's the number one position the Eagles need to upgrade in free agency?
Well, here's good. Now, see, because it's funny because people were making fun of us.
What a shock.
Yeah, no, but it's funny. The one guy's definitely right on it. But let me explain what I mean. So a couple of people said, why do we have to say with so many positions on one of the last few shows that they need to draft one and sign one? Because the roster's not good enough. That's why we said it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious why.
Yeah, I mean, the guy, I understand because they were sick of it. It was like a broken record. I get that part of it, but it's almost a miracle that they made the playoffs. I understand they beat a lot of cream puff. They had a lot of easy games not any games easy, but you get it. The schedule was very favorable, and they took advantage of it. Good for them. They made the playoffs. It's a pretty damn good accomplishment in Sirianni's first year. But the fact of the matter is the roster's not good enough, not even close to being good enough. They need a lot of work. Yep. I think some people are going to disagree with this. Okay. When I go to my order here, well, I'll just do the first one. But you could, and I know you want to have safety first. See, I'm looking at it. What do they see? I'm taking the Eagles' philosophy. We're going to have more on. You had a really good point to start this. What's going to change in year two with the coaches' philosophies? And we're starting to get intel from our sources on this. We're going to develop. We got to get some stuff corroborated from people who know these, people who know what's going on. But I would put defensive end one, and here's why. Yes, safety is a bigger need, but they don't address it the way other teams do. For whatever reason, they just won't spend the kind of resources that it takes. Yes, they did sign Rodney McLeod to a nice deal back in 2016. Great draft pick. What could he say? The guy he's terrific signing, whatever it was back then, $6 or $7 million a year. Great signing. But they've kind of done the bargain basement stuff. Otherwise, it's either a lower draft. The fourth round pick, Wallace, has not worked out at all. Epps has been a really nice story of development last season. We think he'll start, but to me, what wins is pressure, and they believe that. So my needs are a little different than most people in terms of ranking them. I'm going to go with defensive end one. They've got one guy, as we talked about the last show, that you can depend on. Only one at the end. And that's Sweat, who's a player, no doubt. And you could actually see it on Trey's video. I didn't like Sweat as a stand-up linebacker because we saw it in training camp, and I was like, all right, I see they're going to run more. They're going to run a little bit more 34 than I thought, and they really did. When in fact, they ran 5-2, a 5-man front a lot, whatever. But they ran a lot of hybrid stuff. Sweat got better at I think it was against Dallas. He really was pushing it. He got after it. He became more comfortable as a stand-up player. But you've got one pass rusher on this team from an outside standpoint. You need more. And you can't win with one guy. And Barnett, to me, is not shown us enough. We talked about him on, I think, the last show, the show before that. So I would rank defensive end, edge rushers, whatever you want to call it, because this is a hybrid scheme. We assume. Don't know enough yet going into the offseason, but we're starting to get some intel back. We know they're going to do some of that. Now, will they do as much hybrid as they did last season? I don't know yet. It's too early.
Defensive end is more important than safety for most teams, and probably for the Eagles, certainly in their history. So I feel you on that. But I try to answer this question differently. I try to answer the question not about positional value, but if you had to line up and play a football game today, who are you putting out there? And you're including the fact that some of these guys are not, like Barnett would not play because his contract is up. So if you had to line up and play a football game today, your starting safeties are Marcus Epps and Kayvon Wallace. And if there were to be an injury, I don't even know who would come in to, I guess Andre Sachere would come in.
Sachere.
Yeah. Your starting corners would be Darius Slay, on the outside, and starting outside corners would be Slay and I guess Zach McPherson.
Yep.
That's pretty nerve-wracking as well.
It
The
is.
starting defensive
Again.
ends
Yeah.
would still be Josh Sweat, and I'm going to cheat a little since Barnett's a free agent and say you could probably start Milton Williams and then have Hargrave and Cox in the middle there and be better than you are at safety and corner and linebacker. So
But you really,
I know that it's an unfair way of looking at it because no matter what, D-line is way more important.
Yes.
So I think we can both agree that but here's the thing. We are talking about free agents.
That's a first, right?
The
That's
Eagles
a first.
are not going to go out and sign Chandler Jones to a 3-year, $30 million deal.
Also holder. Yeah. Exactly.
Right. But somebody will. Somebody will give an old guy money. They gave J.J. Watt money last year.
I mean, they're not right. He was making
old and broken down. Right. I mean, he may not get 3 years, 40. I don't know. But I'm saying the Eagles aren't going to get in bed with an old. I don't think the Eagles are going to sign. I could be wrong about this. Well, again, we'll come back with more information. But give me the defensive end, the young defensive end that they might target. I don't even think there are a ton, unless any moves are made. Yeah.
The guy I like, I don't know if they would do it. He's more of a Brandon Graham type. He's not a high-end pass rusher, but he's a good pass rusher. Emmanuel Ogbah is a really good player.
That's a name I mentioned. Was it with you? Somebody. I thought that was a name. But to me, he's not a game changer. He's a good. I've watched some tape on him. He's a good player. I don't think he's a game changer.
If he doesn't go back to Miami, this will be his fourth team. That does worry me a little bit. But the guy's a good football player. There's no question about it.
Good football player.
He's up there with Brandon Graham. He'll play the run. He actually gets a decent amount of tackles for being a DN.
Yeah.
He's got good length. He's got a good motor, high character.
Right.
Because you could stand him up, but he's more of a 43 DN to me. I mean, he played with his hand down with Kansas City. He played standing up with Miami. He played multiple fronts. This is a really good football player. Now he turns 29, which is not too bad. He turns 29 in November. Drafted by Cleveland, played for Kansas City, helped them win. They went to Miami, signed a decent mid-level deal of $7.5 million a year. He's going to command over 10 because if you look at just the rushers who are under 30,
right,
aren't a lot of good ones. The fact it's pretty weak.
I would agree with you, and that's why I think Ogba's probably going to wind up getting a pretty good deal. And I don't know if Howie wants to get in bed with him, Ogba, for that much money, knowing he's got Sweat, knowing he's got Brandon Graham coming back, and knowing he's probably going to address this position in the draft. I mean, if he can get Ogba in here on a 1 or 2 year deal, I would say yes. But I don't, because Ogba is 28 and most of these pass rushers on the market right now are in their 30s. I kind of think that Ogba's going to get a pretty good deal.
Yes, so he'll get into double digits APY. Yeah, no question about it. He's a player. He's been really good everywhere. Hassan Reddick is a very interesting player who really maximized his contract.
Right.
Panthers got a lot out of him. Different player. Ogba's got better positional versatility. That's it. I mean, if you go, that's it. I mean, Charles Harris, he did nothing up to last year with the Lions. He did a good job. But you're not. He's a total mid-level free agent. Now he would be a good one because he's younger. Right. He's got upside. He's got a great motor. He's explosive. I think Cosell will admit he thought he was going to be way better. Greg really liked him coming out of that draft. He liked him better than Barnett, if I remember. I think they were the same draft, if I'm not mistaken.
He liked Harris better than Barnett?
Yes, he did coming out. And Barnett up to this past season was a better player.
Yeah, I know Harris was the better athlete, the more explosive, twitchier guy, and Barnett was the more of the technician. Right. And neither of them have really been outstanding in the NFL. Exactly. But I do think I like Harris. We talked about him a little bit last year. He seemed because he played for he played for somebody that the Eagles were playing. Detroit.
No, Detroit. No, Detroit.
Yeah. And he was starting to kind of put some things together there. So that's like kind of a value signing where maybe you can get him on a 1 or 2 year deal.
He's a guy, right? Because they will play. They'll play a hybrid. They're going to do hybrid, as we understand. They're still going to do it. Yep. No, I can't. I'm going to look this up. I'm going to find out, or someone will tell me what percentage. What percentage did they change their scheme from a 43 to whatever they were playing 5-2, 5-1, 5-1-5, whatever they were doing? I want to know what kind of hybrids they were. I want to get the scheme breakdown.
Right.
Now, I do believe we've talked about this. I think as much as I criticize again, I still think he was hamstrung to a certain extent because of linebacker,
Yeah.
because they're not deep on the outside of corner. There's only so much you can do, which is not his fault. He doesn't control who the Eagles sign and trade for, or draft and all that stuff.
Yep.
But I would expect you made a good point earlier. Year two of this, the front office should have a much better idea about now that they've seen these guys coach. The communication should be better, as it usually is with the coaching staff in year two. Okay, we've seen what you guys did. We let's go about what you need. Well, and then they'll figure it out in their communications over the next. Well, they've already free agency. They're kind of the haze in the barn. Kind of, they've already set their plan for it.
Right.
And then they'll start getting the negotiations, as all teams do, starting at the combine next week. But
sure,
to move this along here, I think Charles Harris is a good name. Just from if it's cheap, he would make Harold Landry's way out of the price zone. He's going to command. He had a great season for Tennessee. Tennessee wants him back.
Right.
But just Nwosu, I love. He's a good player, very underrated outside linebacker for the Chargers. He's going to cost some money. He's younger. Now I gotta see where the Eagles are on him, see if they like him, because he's a very underrated player. Chargers, nobody knows about them. You really have to follow the Chargers to know. It's just a team like
that's always the case.
Texas Rangers, they're the Texas Rangers to me. Like nobody follows them. The way it is. But I happen to know
that's hysterical. Nobody follows the Texas Rangers. You're right.
It's the same team to me. It's like the team that time forgot.
Yeah.
Sorry,
it's hysterical. Like the Sacramento Kings.
Sacto, yeah, that's the Sacramento Kings. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, to kind of reemphasize the point, if they're going to target somebody who's young on a second contract, but also that they're going to put money into, but not have to completely break the bank, don't you think that it's more likely that it comes at safety where there are more younger players, and plus that's a position they absolutely have to sign somebody, than say defensive line, even though defensive line is more important.
Yes, I'd agree with you. And then, I would say this: they'll sign it in free agent DN. There's no question in my mind they'll do that. Now, whether it's the first wave or the second wave where Roseman's excelled,
right.
Finding bargains, and they're drafting one. I mean, I know people are sick of saying that, but they're going to do that.
Right.
The question is, how deep do they feel like they need to go? I say they had two. I say I'm not counting Barnett. I wouldn't put the odds of him coming back very high. I'm not ruling it out, but he's just been a small underachiever. He's not been what they thought he'd be. These flashes, right. We know, injuries, weight, needs to keep his weight on, and
discipline.
Obviously, that's number one. Thank you. Yeah. So the bottom line is they've got to get more production. Hurries are great, but sacks are better. They got to impact the quarterback more. It's just embarrassing how little they impacted the quarterback last season.
What are they going to do at corner? Are they going to bring? Do they have to bring in a free agent corner with Steven Nelson probably not coming back, or do they rely on the draft where they know that they've got 3 first-round picks, and they should be positioned well to draft a corner if they want. They missed last year.
Absolute lock. They're drafting a corner with one of those. If by a minor miracle they keep all 3 first-round picks, I don't think they will, but if they do, right, we'll go into when we drop our show Monday morning. We'll I've run the top 3 corners by like I did last year. I would ask guys, hey, how do you see these corners? Now it's funny. As I got closer to the draft, more people liked Horn than I imagined would be the case, and he was first. He was overtaken by a little bit. We'll see. I know Sauce Gardner's the clear one. That's not in debate. It's like who's 2, who's 3, who's 4, who's 5. We'll get our first early intel. I have a little bit of intel on that. We'll drop that on Monday. But yeah, if they're there, they're drafting one of those guys. Not Sauce, whoever the kid from LSU, I don't know who they have there. We don't know who they have, how they haven't graded yet, but they're going to draft a corner. And I think they'll draft an end. Those would be the 2 positions to me that they'll draft. Now, and I know receiver, I've got it, I got that in my top 4, but it is not. So what do you have as number 1?
Safety. Because again, if you have to line up and play a game today, you have to start Epps and Kevon Wallace. And one of those 2 guys that I mentioned, the team doesn't view very positively, Kevon Wallace. So that's not a good situation. And then I look at the safety market, and I think that there's ways to bring in guys here that whether it's a Marcus May, a young kid who's going to be on his second contract, has played well for the Jets.
He's coming off a big injury. Let me just make sure that I think
that big. I know he played only 6 games. Yeah, that's true. He is coming off an injury, but Let's see who else. There was another name that I thought maybe a Quandre Diggs, who's a little bit older, but he's not 30 yet. And certainly they signed.
Hate to break the news. So I think he broke his leg. If I'm not mistaken.
Who's that? May?
Yeah. No. May towards Achilles, and I believe I got to check, and I got to. Yeah, tore Achilles. Marcus May, I'm correct. He tore his Achilles.
It was the Achilles. Okay, well, maybe you get him on a good bargain then. Maybe you can get him on a decent bargain. I remember people come back from this. I mean, Cam Akers came back in the same year.
That could be right, and it's not. The Eagles have done that before. They've brought in guys on a one-year deal, come off significant injuries, and sometimes it doesn't work, as it does.
Right.
Let me see what Diggs. Let me see what he did. Did he get hurt?
I mean, Jesse Bates is 25. I don't know what's going to happen. He'll probably wind up going back. He'll probably get franchised, really. But you never know.
Oh yeah, Diggs. Oh, dislocated and broke his right fibula. That's right. Yeah,
was that in the playoff or in the last game of the year? Then
yeah,
he played 17 games. Oh, I didn't realize that. That's too bad.
I felt so bad for him because he was on a contract year.
Wow.
They want him back, but to me, either tag him. It's hard because it's a bad injury, a dislocation and fracture.
Right.
Of his right fibula is terrible. I mean, it's just he'll come back from it this season. He'll play. And, we'll see. But you can't.
No, that's tough.
You can't do that.
And then so we'll see. Well, I mean, they're gonna have to sign somebody. So I have a feeling there's a long list of names here. Some are veterans who aren't that old, and some are a little bit.
It's hard.
Still young.
It's hard. So the guys that you could do, LaMarcus Jordan's been a nickel for the last couple of years. Talking to coaches who've worked with him,
that's a tough one.
And they don't need that. Justin Burris is a decent mid-level free agent for the Panthers. He played for the Jets.
Yep.
Keanu Neal's Dan Quinn's guy who played Jack linebacker for the Cowboys. Right. He's Kareem Jackson's older. The guy's going to cost a ton is Marcus Williams.
Marcus Williams will cost a lot.
Yeah, I just don't see it.
Right.
I'm looking.
Maybe a Deion Bush from Chicago. They were always a pretty good defense. He's 28.
Yeah, he's a mid-level guy, and that would be like the Eagles to sign a mid-level, lower middle level.
Right.
Ricardo Allen retired.
Jaquiski Tartt's 30, but he played well last year at times. I thought, he could be a short-term signing.
Yeah. He's had a couple contracts with the Niners.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I just don't know why they won't spend at least a second-round pick on the safety. Come on.
That's for another podcast, my friend.
I can understand why. I see now why you're so mad. You get so fired up. It's so absurd.
It's gross neglect. I mean, what are you going to do?
Cosell about this. He'll tell you, because when he watches the tape, you got to have guys. This is not the 1980s with a strong safety and a free safety. They don't play them that way anymore.
Right.
You need guys who can move.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So look, I mean, we've gone through the D line there. Linebacker, we talked about with Greg Cosell.
Wait a minute.
I don't know what they're going to do.
Hang on. I've got a DN1, safety 2 to make you happy.
Okay. DN1, safety 2.
Okay. I've got corner 3. They need an outside corner in the worst way. Who's younger. No question about that.
I'm not going to argue it. I mean, I'd probably have it safety, corner, D end, but I think those are the top 3. Only because, you can't just assume that your next starter is Zach McPherson right now. McPherson.
They don't look at him that way.
It's a hard position for free agency purposes, because if you sign a guy, you have to give him a lot of money. That means he's a starter. But if you already know you're drafting somebody, then it's not that you can know. You never know how the draft board is going to go. It's a difficult position. Usually, you wind up addressing corner slot, but they're entrenched in the slot,
Yep. There are a lot of slot corners out there.
Or you just wait until if you don't get the guy you want in the draft, then you do what they did last year. You wait until July and August and you get the veteran like Steve Nelson and you hold your breath. You just hold your breath.
But, I do believe what they'll do is they're going to draft a corner again to finish this off. They're drafting a corner with one of those 3 picks, especially if they keep all 3. I just don't see any way. I'd bet $100 that they would draft a corner. Mm-hmm. And then the question is, what do they do with the other 2 picks? We'll get into that in the future. But for free agency, I don't. When I'm looking at my list here, there's some younger mid-level guys. Darius Williams with the Rams just won a Super Bowl. It's been a good story of development. Charvarius Ward's went for 3rd corner from the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. Started square with Dallas. they're older guys. Forget Casey Hayward. He's just an older guy. Good player, but he still could play, no doubt, no doubt. But he's
I just don't think they're going to sign that
no
type of
corner.
guy.
Yeah, and here's the thing in year two, folks. They're going to want to play. You saw them play way more man in the second half. That was surprising. Remember, they had the most zone coverage in the NFL in the first half, and then the Rams run the most of the second half. They actually the Rams went up, I think, between 89 and 91% zone coverage for the season. It's incredible.
Yeah, so they're going to want to do some things on the back end there,
right?
So they're going to come out of this draft with a lot of. Listen, I don't know if it's second round safety or anything like that, but they're going to come out of this draft with a lot of young and they've already started stockpiling some corners that they hope one or two works. Out of the Kerry Vincent and Tay Gowan and the three other guys, Mac McCain.
Yeah,
no, you can't rely on it, but you could see that they've already started to plant the seed of we know we need a lot of bodies at this position. Yeah.
Hopefully,
they're going to come out of the draft with a ton of secondary. I can't imagine that they don't.
Right. Remember Banner told us that what we had him last time we
throwing darts.
Right. He said they would that's why certain positions they would not spend the capital. And I kind of laughed. I'm like, that's what you guys would do, throw darts. And he laughed. He goes, look, we would take guys in the sixth round, the Macho Harrises of the world who went up starting.
Sure. They did it 2 years ago, and Quez Watkins winds up being a dart that hit. I mean, maybe not a bullseye, but he hit. They like him, so that's good.
Speaking of that,
right. Hold your thought. I want to, because we're going to really finish off with we can't not talk about the offense at all, even though we know defense needs
next.
Yeah. So let's tell our friends that check out our other friends at phlsportsnation.com, enhancing the fans' experience with all of their great coverage and content. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com and at phlsportsnation on Twitter. And we'll pause real quick for another word from our great sponsors, including our friends at Sky Motor Cars. All right. As we finish it off, we do have to talk a little bit about the offense. I mean, I think they're pretty good on the offensive line, pretty good as far as what they want at quarterback, as far as addressing it. We'll see what happens if they do anything at starter, but you got Minshew as your backup and you got a developmental guy in Reed Sinnett. Wide receiver is really the only position we talked about with Greg Cosell. I'm of the mindset that this is going to be a modest type of look into free agency. I don't think they're bringing in Chris Godwin or Allen Robinson or Mike Williams.
No, Mike Godwin ACL. All right, so I want to address a couple questions. People ask about running. We'll get to receiver in a second. That's what my fourth position in my team needs rankings. But a couple of people asked me about. I guess there are a lot of people like Boston Scott. Is there a way to not tenor and bring him back? Yes. Is the answer yes. In fact, every NFL team does that.
Yeah.
So here's the scenario. I talked to an agent about it earlier this week. He goes, what's happened to me is like they look at the tenor number. They go, they're not doing that. They go, hey, we'll give you, let's say the tenor number is 2 point. I don't know what the tenors are this year because they're not out yet. But let's say it's 2-1 for the low tender, right? 2.1.
Right.
It's too much to pay for him, but they want him back. Let's say they want him back. Say, hey, listen, we'll fully guarantee you $900,000. We'll get you up to $1.5 million if he hits these benchmarks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the agent says yes, you got a deal. If he says no, see ya. He's replaced. Boston Scott's replaceable. The running backs, I know the Eagles ran the ball a ton last season, way more than we expected, but we know why. But the fact of the matter is they ran it damn well, and Boston Scott's a good football player. He's versatile. He's missed a touchdown. He's got special teams value. But for a back, you don't pay a backup running back $2.1 million. I think there's a way to answer the people who ask us.
Right. A number 3 running back, by the way, because Kenneth Gainwell should be the backup to Miles.
But again, right. But Boston Scott, he's just different from what they have. Last year they were basically a 2-man backfield because Hertz was like their third back. It was always they rarely ran 3 running backs. It was usually, unless somebody was hurt, and they did have some injuries. So. That would be if for these tenders, that's how they would do it. You don't bring the guy back. The way this agent explained to me is like the agent has to explain to the player, hey, listen, they're not going to do this, but this $900,000 here is going to keep you on the roster because they're not going to cut you for that $900,000. Whereas the $2.1 million, none of it's guaranteed. Tenders are never guaranteed, so you have to make a decision here. You're going to make. I think you can make a little bit over half if you just play all 17 games or Maybe you play 14 games, but you're not going to make your 2.1. You got to make. Do you want to guarantee 900 grand, or do you want to take your chances with 2.1? They're not going to give it to you anyway. You can go somewhere else and maybe make it, but you could stay with a team and a coaches like it. So that's the way to bring Boston Scott back potentially.
Yeah, so there's a chance to do it. There's a chance then you risk losing him, but like you said, if you lose him, you lose him. It's you're not like sitting there losing sleep because you don't have Boston Scott. You've got Miles Sanders, you got Kenneth Gainwell, and then the draft and free agency and everything.
Yep.
So I agree with you on that. What about wide receiver? Did Greg kind of sell you on Byron Pringle being like a pretty interesting option?
No, I put him on our list. I said I know our chief source spoke very highly of him. He really matured as a receiver. As an undrafted free agent, and he's got special teams return value, which is important. Their Eagles special teams returns are atrocious, as we know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They need some juice. You can't depend on Rager to do that. It hasn't happened. Greg Ward, he won't be. I can't see Greg Ward coming back anyway. But they need to do something to get some juice going with a return game.
Yeah.
And plus, he's got good enough size. He's been a good story of development. Yep. Yeah, he's a mid-level free agent. He'd be a good one. He's young. He's relatively young.
Yeah,
sure. Now, look, one thing, Quez Watkins, this is what Sirianni said. I know sometimes it's not what they say. It's about what they do. But he did say he could be the best number 2 receiver he's ever worked with. Okay, we'll see. Could be. Mm-hmm. But he hasn't done it yet.
Right.
He's got upside. You need guys in the mixer. Now, they're going to draft one. This is a position where, like at corner, we know they're going to draft one. They don't necessarily have to sign a veteran free agent, but at wide receiver, they need a veteran receiver.
Mm-hmm.
They got to do it. They don't have a choice. We cried about this before the season. They got to do this. They didn't do it.
Is there anyone else? I'm sorry. Yeah, they have to. Is there anyone else other than Pringle, strictly from an ex receiver or outside receiver standpoint, that kind of
they'd want to pay?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's not going to be Godwin. It's not going to be Devontae Adams. Probably not going to be Mike Williams either. It's going to be a mid-level guy. Yeah, anyone that jumped out. Juju, we talked about. Greg seems to think that Juju can win on the outside because he did it at USC.
Yeah, but he's more of a slot now. That's the thing.
That doesn't mean he can't be, though. I mean, this is like the Justin Jefferson argument all over again. I mean, if there's tape, he can do it. He can do it.
Yeah, he's just so much better in the slot, though. This level, remember, he's not Justin Jefferson coming out of college where you have to project what he could be.
Right.
He's been here, and we know what he is. Godwin would have been in it because he could line. Talk about a guy who could line up anywhere. He literally could line up anywhere. He's unbelievable, super high character kid.
Yep.
Shame.
Of course he is. He went to Penn State.
Penn State, yeah. I'm looking at my X list.
Wait till Jahan Dotson gets into the NFL.
We'll be talking to. He was a Senior Bowl guy, I think.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. No, he never went though. He did not go to this. He was supposed to, and then did not go.
Yeah. True X's. Allen Robinson doesn't run well enough.
No.
Our Bears people told us they were going to move him to the slot last year. So if they really wanted him to be their slot.
It seems kind of short on X's, to be honest with you. If that's where the Eagles want to go.
Okay, here are your X's in free agency. Allen Robinson, Chris Godwin, Devontae Adams. Will Fuller didn't really – he got a finger injury, barely played last season. You can't – he was hurt. Great big touchdown guy, but he could run.
Yeah.
He could play X, but he's just not good enough with his injury history. AJ Green, but he's older.
Yeah, Mike Williams.
AJ Green, Cosell told us on a fantasy show that he could still play. I wouldn't be opposed on a 1-year deal that's cheap. Is that
not a bad idea?
I know
not a bad idea.
I know he's had an injury history, but you beggars can't be choosers here, man. There's not a lot. Yeah. I'm looking at it. It's a deep list. It's a good list of Z's, a ton of Z's. Mm-hmm. I love the name you brought up with Greg. Zach Pascal is a good veteran in the mix guy. He's a hard worker, great story development.
Yep, knows the offense, knows the coaching staff. Yeah,
yep, he'd be a great one. As a rotational guy, he's more, he could play X, but he's more of a Z.
I thought Greg was going to like Keelan Cole a little more because he has some pretty good size and he's had some good games in his career.
He's more fourth receiver though. I like Pascal. It's a great name. He's a great mid-level, $3-4 million a year guy who you love to have. Was a great example of hard work and discipline and development.
Right.
Man, they're like 80 Z receivers on this list. My goodness gracious! I'm looking at my file here. Here's an X, but he doesn't run well enough. Although he did a good job with the Lions. Josh Reynolds.
Right.
he just doesn't run well. The Titans, who were terrible without Julio Jones, when Julio missed most of the season, they had enough of Josh Reynolds. They cut him. That tells you what they thought of him.
Right. Interesting. We'll see what happens with DJ Chark. I think that he'd be
I
a good
love him,
option, but
yeah.
even coming off the injury, he might actually, because he's young and he's good, he might get an outpriced deal.
Well,
So
we're going to check on that. We're going to see if the Eagles have interest in him, because I could tell you as a fact,
mm-hmm.
there was a rumor, it turned out to be false, that he was available.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the Eagles checked into that last year. I know for a fact that they talked. Now, I don't know who talked to whom, but I'd heard from a Jaguar source that someone called on, someone checked into it. So now, does that mean the general manager, the personnel director, or the head coach wants him? I have no idea, but we're going to find out, because he's a very good football player. And what you have to do, folks, this is what someone told me this week. A personnel guy with another team said that it's not just that if the guy missed time, it's how many times he's listed on the injury report for a prolonged period of time.
Yep.
If the guy's been in the league 4 years and he's been available for 64 plus 65 games, and he's missed 18, but he's been on the injury report per week 60 times, that's a problem.
Yeah,
you need to know that
right.
when you start
structurally issues or chronic injury type issues. Yeah, that's an issue.
Important. Now, he's a great kid.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard from people who know him. Very coachable, wants to do well. Urban Meyer's really tough on him. I'll say this much about Urban Meyer. I don't respect the guy for a lot of things he did.
Mm-hmm.
But he got on. Chark said he actually made him a better football player. He got on him because he thought he needed to bulk up and get stronger and compete higher.
Right.
And apparently, from what we hear, Chark takes coaching really well. And, look, I think he'll be out of the Eagles' price range. I just have this feeling, because if you look at, as you said, and it's very clear in my list, X's it's a top-heavy list.
Yeah.
He'd be a great X, and he's young, but he does have an injury history. You got to get to the bottom of it.
We will get to the bottom of it next week when we're in Indianapolis. Our next podcast will drop Monday morning. It'll be an NFL scouting combine preview. We'll get into everything to look forward to while everybody's out there in Indianapolis. That's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. Hey, I didn't botch the ending this time. That's a good improvement from the last podcast. Make sure you're checking out our producer, Hunter Brody's work. He's on YouTube. Sports Talk with Broads is his channel. His website is called broadsmedia.com. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.